Published agenda. 2 minutes late. Brian Yates and let's see, Shelley, you got the recorder going. Maureen, you got the recorder going. Hello, Deidre.
Deidre.
Hi, everyone.
Well, I know that's not me.
This is Brian. Mark, do you want me to go ahead and get started with the procedures and the roll call?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Montgomery County MUD number 46 Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, March the 17th, 2021. Appreciate everyone being able to attend the remote meeting today. As in prior meetings, I'll briefly go through the remote meeting procedures and we'll perform a roll call. So to begin with, I need to remind everyone the meeting is being recorded as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. Second, please remember to state your name before you speak, including the making of any motions. When you're not speaking, please be sure to mute your line. Third, we'll continue the practice of having a roll call to vote on each motion. After a motion has been made and seconded, please wait until you hear your name called and then respond with a verbal aye, a nay, or an abstention. Finally, we need to identify each person who's joining the meeting remotely today so we can accurately reflect the attendance and the minutes of the meeting. I'll perform a roll call for the board members, followed by staff and consultants. When you hear your name or your company called, please respond by indicating that you're present in the meeting. Likewise, if you need to leave the meeting before it adjourns, please announce that you're doing so before you disconnect. Once I've completed the roll call for directors, staff, and consultants, I'll ask for any members of the public to identify themselves for the record. Starting with our board of directors, Mark Vonderow.
Present.
Margie Podjolinski.
Here.
Deidre Eklund.
Here.
George Newman.
Here.
Scott Custer.
Here.
That completes the roll call for our directors. We'll move on to Woodlands Water staff. Jim Stinson.
Present.
Mike Mooney.
Present.
Maureen Bourgeois.
I'm here.
Jeannie Scott.
I'm here.
Shelley Lawson Kennedy.
Here.
Any other members of Woodlands Water staff in the meeting? If not, we'll move on to Sanderson River Authority staff. Ron Kelling.
Present.
Chris Meeks.
Present.
Matt Corley.
Present.
Aaron Schindelwolf.
Present.
Any other Sanderson River Authority staff members in the meeting? If not, we'll move on to MUD 46 consultants. Do we have any MUD 46 consultants in the meeting? If not, we'll move on to members of the public. Do we have any members of the public present in the meeting? We need to
Yes.
identify you for the record as well.
Yes, sir. Arthur Bredehoff, resident of the Woodlands.
Wilson McCoy, resident of the Woodlands, MUD 46.
Any other members of the public present in the meeting? Maureen, does that cover everyone who's logged in?
Everybody's covered.
Okay, that'll complete the roll call. Mark, I'll hand it back over to you to begin the agenda. Thank you.
This is Mark Vonderow. Thank you, Brian, and welcome Wilson and Arthur to MUD 46, the funnest MUD district in all the state of Texas. Wilson, do you have anything you would like to say during the public comment portion of our meeting? Guess not. Wilson's on mute. Mr. Arthur Bredehoff, former director in MUD 47. You're now a citizen. Do you have anything you'd like to say during the public comment section?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I thank all the directors of MUD 46 for their service. We appreciate what you're doing on behalf of your residents. I wanted to share some comments and observation about an item that's in your packet on the agenda is the groundwater surface water budget mix for fiscal year 22. This is an opportunity to impact our aquifers and subsidence in a positive way. As you all know, today, the mix of groundwater surface water is 65% groundwater and 35% surface water. May 13th, 2020, the subcommittee on groundwater surface water, at the time I was a trustee and chair of that committee, recommended to the full trustee board 4 items, and the detail is in your packet. One of the items that is very important is the 50-50 ratio of groundwater surface water for budgetary purposes. And that recommendation was to review that mix on an annual basis. And as you all know, we're in the budget season for San Jacinto Woodlands Division budget. So it is appropriate time for that to be reviewed. We would ask the board to have a good discussion and empower your trustee representative to go to the April meeting and give an indication that MUD 46 would like to look at a budget proposal for a 50-50 ratio of groundwater surface water. As we all know, we have to be always concerned about our customers because at the end of the day, the customers pay for service, they pay for water. So you would say, what's the impact if we move from 65-35 to 50-50? The impact is approximately $2.30 per month for an average user that uses 10,000 gallons or more water per month. Today, they pay about $28 and change, and they would in fiscal year 22, based upon fiscal year 21 costs, because that's all the costs we know right now, the rate would be $31 and change for an average Woodlands customer using 10,000 gallons or more. Trust you all saw the study done by SJRA called Static Well Levels from 2010 to 2020. This was an excellent presentation made in December 2020 that showed when we started surface water and we were at a 65% level, the aquifers started to regain and subsidence started to mitigate. And in 2018, we moved to a 50-50 blend and the aquifers dropped a little bit, but they still were in a more positive shape and subsidence was still subsiding. And then in 2019, we went to 35% and the data has shown that the aquifers started to drop and subsidence started to get greater. So I would ask the board to empower your trustee representative to be positive, to give a good indication at the April meeting that SJRA would look at a budget for fiscal year 22 basis a ratio of 50-50. And this is an opportunity for the Woodlands, MUDs, and WWA to lead and demonstrate to all users of water that you have to be positive. You got to take a proactive step for today's generation and our future generations to help preserve our aquifers and stop subsidence. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you very much, Arthur. Let's see, number 3, consider an act on requests for adjustments. Mr. Mooney?
Fortunately, I do have one. This is Mike. This is a resident in High Oaks at 63 Dufall Court named Dale Montalbean. For unexplained usage. This is for January. Nothing to do with the freeze. This is in January. You just got in question is 210,000 gallons. His average is 3. So the adjustment would be for 207,000 gallons for a count of $1,210.37.
He's gonna be out on you causing the death of a young mother.
I never talked to the young person.
Can you hear me okay?
This is Brian. I think we've got somebody who's not on mute. Sounds like a television or something in the background. If everybody who's not speaking can mute, please.
Okay. I need to repeat it, or did you all get it the first go around?
You were cutting in it. This is Scott. You were cutting in and out for me, but I think you said it's a 210,000. And so the adjustment is 207K.
Adjustment, yeah, 207,000 adjustment. His average, it was 210, his average is 3, so we take off the 3. And it would be a 207,000 gallon adjustment to his account, or a $1,210.37 credit to his account. He is applying for the one-time unexplained usage. He does not have a sprinkler system, doesn't have a pool, just truly unexplained. It does meet the requirements for the one-time adjustment, and we are recommending approval.
Okay. Need a motion if the board so deems.
Mark, I'll make the motion. This is Margie.
Okay, thank you, Margie.
No, this is Scott. I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, I'll call the vote. Mark Vonderow votes aye. Margie Podolinsky, how do you vote?
Aye.
Deidre Eklund, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott Custer, how do you vote?
Aye.
And George Newman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, all right, thank you, George. Okay, consent agenda for,
Hey, Mark, this
Yes,
is
ma'am.
Jeannie. This
Yes,
is Jeannie. I have two requests for waiver of penalty and interest.
okay, go ahead,
Um,
Scott.
Mr. Metzger at 46 Gunlet Drive and Diane Deloach at 46 Hempel White Way. They both have the same issue of forgery of checks. They paid their taxes in January, or tried to, and both their checks were stolen. I do have the backup paperwork, the police report, the bank letter, and Mr. Metzger is asking for $112.63 to be waived, and Deloach is asking for $296. I do have the backup paperwork. This does not fall in the category of the waiver of penalty and interest based on the appraisal district era or the tax office era. But they were trying to pay in good faith based on their checks being whitewashed and cashed under somebody else. So I'm not sure, Brian, I don't know if you can help out on this or not, or if it just doesn't fall in those categories, obviously.
Yeah, this is Brian. I mean, the board doesn't have, under the tax code, the board doesn't have discretion to provide relief unless it meets one of the statutory exceptions, unfortunately.
And there's not one for trying to pay in good faith. I was actually trying to find one, section 11 something, I thought.
So they
we would have to, yeah, we'd have to defer on that for a minute because I didn't get this request before, so I'll have beforehand. So I'll have to pull up the tax code statute to try to double check the language again.
Okay.
They are asking for a waiver for the full amount of the check that was stolen, or
No,
they
the penalty and interest.
Say that again.
Just the penalty and interest.
Because the check came late because it was
Right, because their original
stolen.
check was stolen. And when they got the delinquent notice, they called us immediately and they started doing their research and found that the checks were stolen. And I do have copies of the checks to
Okay.
show that the names were changed on the check.
So it was stolen out of the mail and changed somehow.
Yes.
Okay. And the two penalties in total are 100 something and 60 something. What was it again?
Mr. Metzger's was 112.63 and Ms. Deloach's was 296 even.
In the essence of saving time today, can we have Brian research that to get more specific on the statute that's written for refunding. And in the meantime, Jeannie, contact both people and tell them that we're doing what we can do to legally refund their money, and tell them it's pretty strict rules and regulations. And we just
Yes,
want to do some
I've already
further-
told them what the law is, but I'll be glad to call them and let them know what's going on.
What discussion, what are y'all's views, board? Let's help me out here.
I'm surprised that we can't give a waiver on penalty and interest. I could understand we can't give a waiver on the payment, but on the penalty
law-
and interest.
George, the law is pretty clear on how it can be waived. And it wasn't an error on our part or the appraisal district that prevented them from paying their taxes.
That's a pretty crummy deal, though.
Yeah, this is Scott, though. I could see that would be set up to prevent fraud or favoritism or something, although we do have a 5-person board, but if the law is clear, the law is clear, I guess. Seems like a
Yeah,
cut and
this
dry
is
case that we would approve if the law would allow us to, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is Brian. This is all under section 33011 of the Texas tax code. And it has it's the polar opposite of the discretion that you have for waiver of penalties and interest and modifying water sewer bills. For tax bills, it's the opposite. You have very, very little discretion.
Okay, nothing we can do.
Okay. Then if you want to tell the people, no, we can't do it under state law, then I need a motion.
Well, this is Brian. I don't think if you don't have discretion, then there's no action that's necessary by the board. And so just to make sure that I'm clear on the facts, again, Jeannie, you're saying that they did what again, as far as the actions they took versus the
They filed a
the
police
issues with the
report.
check?
They filed a police report and their checks were whitewashed, made out to somebody else and cashed. And I have all the
Checks
backup
that
paper.
were, just to be clear, checks, they prepared checks to Mud 46 to pay their tax bill, presumably before the January 31st deadline. Did they
Yes.
claim that they put those in the mail?
Yes,
They put those in the US mail, and somehow those were
yes.
taken out of the mail before they reached our office. And
Yeah.
the people who obtained those checks altered the checks and then altered who they were payable to, but in the amount, I guess, of whatever the tax payment was, and reappropriated those funds.
That's correct. And the one Mr. Metzger paid, was paying on January 23rd. And the person that forged the check deposited it on February the 1st, which still would have been January amount because the 31st fell on a weekend. And then Ms. Delowe, she did hers on January the 12th. And it was deposited, not very clear here, it looks like the end of January. The name was changed and deposited the end of January. And they both contacted us when they got our February notice that their taxes were not paid.
And they made payment, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
which included penalty and interest, yes.
I assume Mr. Yates is thinking or reading or doing something.
I think.
Yeah, I'm reading. I'm going back through the
Okay.
33.011 again. If y'all want to move on to other business and just kind of set this aside for now, and then I can pick it back up under the attorney's report.
Okay.
I am just gonna say before we go on, this is Margie, that in all my years, I've never seen this happen. So it's quite rare. I don't know if Mark, you've ever seen it, but I don't remember ever seeing this before.
No, not being whitewashed and names altered and proof from law enforcement, documentation from law enforcement. So,
So very
okay.
rare.
All right, let's move along. Consent agenda items 4 through 8. Does anything need to be moved out to be discussed separately?
We need to talk about the minutes.
Okay. You want to go ahead and take 4 individually, separate from the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to do
Go
it
ahead.
now?
Yeah, go ahead, George.
We had a special meeting on March 2nd. The minutes for that meeting were not included in our packet. And I wanted to put a note on item number 19 in the minutes that a special meeting was held on March 2nd. Meeting minutes will be published with today's minutes in April.
Okay.
This is Scott. Procedurally, just like I get what you're saying, George. I don't know. We didn't actually discuss that at this meeting though. So putting it in the meeting minutes specifically seems wrong.
We did discuss that there was going to be a special meeting and Shelley was going to arrange it.
That was on the, we discussed that at future agenda. Okay.
So I wanted to disclose that we had the meeting. Normally we might, I guess, include the minutes with this one, but it didn't get done.
We didn't have a date and time for that meeting though, when on the February 17th date.
That's true.
So that really couldn't be included because you can say there was going to be a special meeting, but we didn't have a time and the date.
Well, but I think we could modify the minutes to reflect there was a discussion regarding a special meeting and we agreed to have one. I think that's what George is saying. And that's accurate.
That's good. That's a good statement.
All right. Does that satisfy your request, George?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do we need a motion to have George's request about the agenda of the special meeting added to the, is it this month's meeting or last month's meeting agenda?
It would be the minutes of last month.
The minutes of last month. Okay.
This is Scott. George, you want to restate your motion then and with those new words?
I think the new words were that we, under item number 19, we were planning to schedule a special meeting in March. And we did that.
Okay.
This is Scott. I would second that.
All right. Motion by George, second by Scott. Mark Vonderow votes aye. Margie Podolinsky, how do you vote?
Aye.
Deidre Eklund, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott Custer, how do you vote?
Aye.
And George Newman, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right. Now we'll go to the consent agenda items 5, 6, 7, and 8. Any questions? Take anything out? Discussion?
Mark, do you want a motion then to adopt the consent agenda?
Yes, we,
Okay.
if we don't want to talk about any of those, 4.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, then I'll make the motion that we adopt the consent agenda. This is Margie.
I'll second.
Okay, second by George. Mark Vonderow, I vote aye. Margie Podjalinsky, how do you vote?
Aye. Aye.
Deidre Eklund, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott Custer, how do you vote?
Aye.
And George Newman, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Number 9, receive the attorney's report.
This is Brian. So a few things to cover with the board under the attorney's report. Before we get to that, I think let's go ahead and circle back around to the discussion on the request for the waiver on the account. I have gone back through the section there on waiver of penalties and interest under 33011. I think I've found a provision that we can make work. Under J, it says that subsection J, it says the governing body of a taxing unit may waive penalties and interest on a delinquent tax if the taxpayer submits evidence sufficient to show that the taxpayer delivered payment for the tax before the delinquency date to subsection 1, the United States Postal Service for delivery by mail, but an act or omission of the Postal Service resulted in the taxpayer's payment being postmarked after the delinquency date. I think, Jeannie, if you're able to advise the board that you believe the taxpayer submitted sufficient evidence to show that they delivered the payment to the U.S. mail before the delinquency date, but based on what evidence you've been provided, the Postal Service made an error that allowed for that mail to be stolen, essentially, and that by the time they resubmitted payment, it resulted in the payment being postmarked after the delinquency date, then the board has the discretion to consider a waiver of penalties and interest.
Yes, I believe I can do that. I have their checks here of when they were dated and when they were cashed, and they were both done in plenty of time for them to get to us. So I think that will work.
Do we need a motion then, Brian?
Yes, this is Brian. You do, because you do have discretion on this. It's a may, not a shall. So we would need a motion to authorize waiver of penalties and interest on this account.
Okay, then I'll make that motion that we waive the penalties and interest on these 2 customers.
Thank you, Margie.
So this is Scott. So Brian, just to be super clear, you are advising us that this matches that statute based on Jeannie's comment there.
This is Brian. Yes, Jeannie's confirming that the taxpayer has submitted evidence sufficient to show that the taxpayer met the requirements of subsection 33011J of the Texas Tax Code.
Scott, thank you for stating that clearly. Appreciate it.
Okay, motion was by Margie. I need a second.
This is George. I'll second.
Okay, thank you, George. This is Mark Vonderow. I vote aye. Margie Podjalinsky, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Deidre Eklund, how do you vote?
Looks like she dropped. This is Scott.
Okay. Scott Custer, how do you vote?
Aye.
George Newman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Maureen, has Deidre dropped off? Or can you tell?
I don't see her, so yes,
Okay,
she dropped off.
first time that happened. So do we show her dropping off, abstaining, or what do we do? What? Hello.
Yeah, this is Brian. It'll be a vote of 4 in favor, none against, and Deidre absent for the vote.
Okay. All right. All right. Brian, you want to continue your attorney's report?
Yes, sir. A few other items to cover with the board this afternoon. One, as I'm sure all of you know, the governor did take action last week to rescind the mandatory mask restrictions and business restrictions that were put in place over the summer to combat the COVID pandemic. Some questions arose as to whether that action by the governor impacted the disaster proclamation that suspended the in-person meeting requirements under the Texas Open Meetings Act. We have been in contact with the governor's office about the issue and have confirmed with the governor's office that the actions taken last week did not impact in any way his disaster proclamation. So we do remain in a remote meeting environment at this time, and we'll of course let you know when that does change. Jim's going to report under the GM report on efforts that him and staff are making to allow for in-person meeting requirements or in-person meetings in the coming months, and some of the logistical challenges associated with that. So that's one item. Second item to cover with y'all is that we have taken a look at the Construction 10 or Con 10 for short developer policy, a developer reimbursement policy. The proposed revisions to that policy were circulated by email on Monday by Shelley to all the directors of all the Woodlands districts, and the proposed changes were also uploaded to the Google Drive. This is the result of a question from, I think it was one board 2 or 3 months ago, to dust that policy off since the last time. It was originally prepared in 1976 and was last updated in 1995. So I took a look at it, did make some changes to the policy, primarily to have the policy more closely track the applicable statutes. When the policy was first developed, it essentially regurgitated a lot of the statutory language in the body of the policy, and that can become a problem over time because legislatures are, prone to modify statutes over the years. And if that happens and you're using the actual language of the statute in the policy, it can cause your policy to become out of date when the legislature changes the statute. So I made some changes to include more direct references to whether it be the administrative code or water code or what have you, so that if those statutes change over time, the policy is essentially evergreen and will automatically incorporate whatever changes the legislature may make to the applicable statutes. Also, as I was going through it, I saw the policy had a term on the agreements of 5 years, which is not industry standard. I don't know if back in 1976, when this policy was first developed, if because the Woodlands was moving at such a rapid pace that it was, reasonable for a developer to get an agreement in place, construct the public infrastructure, and then create the necessary taxable value to allow for bonds to be sold in that short of a period of time. But that's not a reasonable time period, even in today's market, and not in the Woodlands anymore either. Standard time period is generally 15 years. It's renewable for longer periods if necessary, depending on the build out schedule for a project. So I did go ahead and update that time period from the 5-year to the standard 15-year period that we have for our other district clients. And that's pretty much it on the Con 10 policy. No action is requested today. This is just for review and discussion. We do anticipate having an item on next month's agenda for each MUD to consider the approval of the revised policy. Since it is a uniform policy, all the MUDs do need to approve the revision even though there's only a handful that actually have potential future development projects that would be pre-funded by the developer. Happy to answer any questions y'all may have on the policy, or if you have them next month, we'll have a separate agenda item to consider questions that you might have as well. I'll stop there and take any questions before I hit the last item.
None from Mark Vonderow.
Okay. Last item, as many of you may know, there is a fiber optics installation contractor in the Woodlands right now that's, for lack of a better term, just kind of wreaking havoc in the community. They are busting water and sewer lines all over the place. They're messing up road curbs in some instances, shutting down segments of roads without proper coordination with the county. Jim and I have been in contact about this contractor. Outside litigation counsel has been engaged by Woodlands Water. Jim has met with Commissioner Nowak, has met with the contractor, Takis, one time, and is going to meet with them again tomorrow. But we don't want to get too much into litigation strategy, but in open session, but we are prepared to pursue all necessary legal remedies should Takis not quickly change their posture and how they're handling these installations. To date, Jim's reported that they've already damaged lines in over 100 locations and caused over $100,000 in damages. So, and they're not even fully ramped up with a number of subcontractors working in the community yet. So it's a problem that's only going to get worse. And so we want to make sure that we're out in front of it as best we can, considering the circumstances, to force them to change their behavior. And that's all I have under the attorney's report. Happy to answer any other questions y'all may have.
Thank you, Brian. Question for Jim Stinson. This is Mark Vonderow. Who are they subcontracting for? Do you know? Jim?
This is Brian. They're the general. So they've got they've got like 40 something subs out there right now, and they're expecting to have over 100 subs once they're fully ramped up.
I mean, is there a big boy name they're doing the work for? Putting this cable in?
Takis. It's Takis, Mark, that they're trying to be a fiber optics for internet.
Okay.
They're located over by, not very far from the water board office.
Okay. So a new internet provider.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sounds like Jim is on top of it with Brian to protect our interest. That's a good sign. Okay. Anything else for Brian before we move along? Let's see here. Number 10, consider an act on modifying how the maximum sewer volume is calculated for water bills issued from February 21 to February of 2022.
Back in the height of the freeze in the area and the broken pipes and the higher than typical usage by many of our customers in February, we were reading meters and calculating water bills. Each February, we do an internal calculation with our water billing software that takes water customer volume in December, January, and February, averages that. And then for the February water bill and all months going forward until the next February, that water average is considered as the maximum sewer volume that any customer will be charged typically during the summer when they start irrigating. This year, we made a decision because we didn't think it was fair to the customer, and we felt like it was the right thing to do. We had to produce a bill. So we used last year's calculation for the sewer volume for the February billing period. What we're requesting is that we are permitted to use that same calculation going forward as the maximum sewer volume for the coming year. In February of 2022, our system will recalculate a maximum sewer volume, but we're requesting that we use the one that we've calculated or used for the February billing period throughout this year. We think it's the fair, reasonable thing to do for the customers, since we had so many that experienced higher than typical usage during the February billing period. We had also talked about in the memo that I sent out and at the trustee meeting that we might be requesting some relief in the way we do adjustments based on leaks and freezes. But at this time, we're not requesting any streamlining or modification to the adjustment policy. Our staff feels like that they can handle those requests in an efficient, effective manner. So the only thing we're asking today is that we be allowed to continue using the last year's maximum sewer volume for the residents for this coming year. And we don't anticipate it to have any meaningful impact on the budgets. Water or sewer calculations don't change that much from year to year, from home to home, unless something really drastically changes with the size of the household. So we anticipate the impact to be minimal on your budget. And we send numbers to the San Jacinto River Authority each month, and they bill us for what our meter readings are. So we think it's the right thing to do and the reasonable thing to do considering the freeze circumstances.
Okay, Jim. Board, I need a motion to use last year's February rate for 2021.
Mark, I'll make the motion. This is Margie.
Okay, thank you, Margie. Wait on a second. Any discussion?
George,
Wait
I'll
on a
make a second.
Okay, George, thank you. Any discussion? All right, I'll call the vote. Mark Vonderow votes aye. Margie Podjalinski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott Custer, how do you vote?
Aye.
And George Newman, how do you vote?
Aye.
All
This
right,
is Scott. Mark, Deidre is back now.
okay,
I'm here. Aye.
okay. Thank you, Deidre. Appreciate it. Jim, all the other boards voted aye, voted to approve that so far?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay. Number 11, receive information on the SJRA staff regarding the review of groundwater surface water delivery ratio for 2022.
And then Ron Kelly, SJRA. Arthur actually did a pretty good job of laying everything out about the groundwater surface water committee, what their recommendations were to review the groundwater surface water ratio on an annual basis. On page 25 in your packet is a simple one-page calculation that shows that using 2021 rates, that your average Woodlands customer pays their blended fee for GRP of about $28.80. If the Woodlands would like to go to a 50-50 blend from 35%, they would have to pay the additional costs for, we'd have to create a new rate within the GRP, and they would have to pay for the additional costs associated with chemicals and the water itself and power. And just a rough calculation of that right now would be that the Woodlands average residential customer of 10,000 gallons per month would go up to $31.10. So it's a $2.30 a month delta. Again, that's based on 2021. We're currently in the process of developing budgets and rates for both GRP and the Woodlands. We won't know what the GRP rate will be until after they vote in May. So this is not a vote to ask for, you're going to do this. We're just seeking some guidance in whether of the relative interest of the muds in the woodlands. If you're interested enough in this, then we would go through the process of trying to identify and calculate that rate, and then come back to you probably in May, if not June, and discuss it and see if you want to add it to your budget for 2022. This is not some long-term commitment. This will be on probably an annual basis for however long these issues continue with groundwater management. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have one question, and back in January, I think Matt Corley showed a chart of PAM 68, and it showed that, you know, even over the last couple of years, the subsidence is continuing, something at a rate of about 1.4 centimeters a year. And what I'm wondering is, when you cut the groundwater pumpage rate, do you do it evenly across the woodlands, or is it spread unevenly, where you continue to pump out here on the west end of the woodlands at a higher rate? And I guess the question is, are you pumping at different rates across the woodlands?
That would be a Chris Meeks question.
Yeah, this is Chris Meeks. Let me help with that. So what we do is, when we pump more from the Jasper than we do the Evangeline. And so basically, if we're going to look at reducing pumping, it's across the woodlands as a whole. It's all the wells. We're doing it aquifer based, not by well or service area.
So you would reduce pumping on the wells out on the west side, in addition to the east side where you show reduced subsidence.
Correct. Across the board, all the wells would be reduced.
Good.
Okay, Mark Vonderow here. The graph that Mr. Corley presented to us, was that the graph with all the little blue dots all over it? Is that the one you're referring to, George?
I can show it.
Do you know what I'm talking?
Yeah, you start off with a web page that shows the blue dots and circles like you described. And when you click on one of those, you get a chart that shows the subsidence over time. There's a lot of scatter in the data. It's not a clean chart. And it doesn't look like it's been updated for 2020. So it's not clean data. It's you have to kind of interpolate through it to see the trend, but the trend is not lining out. It's continuing down. At least that's my interpretation of the data.
It flattened out when we started turning on at 65% surface water in the fall of 2015. Stayed relatively flat. Like you said, there's a lot of noise in that data. But once we hit 35% 2 years ago, it started trending back down.
Meaning subsidence was slowing.
Subsidence was slowing, but then now it's starting to, depending on how you look at it, pick back up or drop.
Okay.
And when you look at the summary page, it shows they calculate the rate to be 1.4 centimeters a year.
Right.
Whoever owns that data.
Subsidence district.
So what? Go ahead, Scott.
I was going to go a slightly different direction, so go ahead with your follow-up, Mark.
Well, if pumping groundwater shows subsidence lessening, holding stable, why shouldn't we go forward with using more surface water? That's my comment.
I agree with the idea. We need to go with more surface water. My concern was that, are we still running at high rates out here on the wells, you know, in the Sterling Ridge area, or is it Harris County, or is there some other influence? And I don't think that's true. but the rate is still, I guess there's still a rate of subsidence over the last couple of years. And we can show the chart if you want to look at it.
And to your point, if the Woodlands goes to 50%, the rest of the folks that we're delivering surface water to are going to we're going to give them the offer, but they're more likely they're going to stay at 35%.
Yeah, this is Scott. I mean, Ron, to that point, the point I was going to make, like the thing to consider, and maybe I'm overcomplicating this, but like we would have to recognize that we're acting in contrary to the county. And so we would choose in that instance to place a premium on ourselves, and we'd have to be convinced that the data would suggest that subsidence is so localized. Now, there was a prominent member of the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District who recently, on his Facebook page, made a very large stink and a proposal to the township to consider going to 100% surface water in the Woodlands as an experiment to figure out what happens with subsidence. Now, if we take this approach, we are acknowledging in some way that subsidence is hyper localized and that we may not care what the rest of Montgomery County does. So, you know, I feel obligated on this vote. I would represent your point of view here. But the way that I see this, or the way you can see this, is that we would choose to put a premium to affect an outcome that may or may not, be completely right. I mean, there's debate on whether or not subsidence is that localized or broad and across the whole aquifer, and the rest of the county will make no change. So, and $2.30 isn't huge on an individual bill, but in aggregate across the Woodlands, it's quite large, and it's very easy to make a stink. I can't remember how many meters we have across the whole Woodlands. That's quite a lot.
The total is $1.5 million for a year.
So that, you know, it's not, so is it a virtuous signal? Is it affecting real impact on subsidence? You know, either way, we're going to act in contrary to the county. And I think we just have to know that going in if we take this approach.
I have this view that, you know, each of us should do our part. And we see that subsidence occurs when you have increased pumpage. And it feels to me that we need to react to that we, you know, what they do up north of us will help us, but we should continue to do what we can to help ourselves.
I agree with George on this. I don't think that we would make a statement on subsidence being localized. I think we're just taking the stance that pumping groundwater causes subsidence. And so how do we lessen the effect?
Okay, the debate continues. And I know this decision would be made on the Woodlands Water Trustee level. Is that correct?
Yeah, and like I said, to be clear, we're just looking for kind of guidance, and I can tell you, I think we've got enough comments from the various different MUDs that we would move forward with developing a rate for this. If anybody wants to buy water above their allocated amount, X is going to be the rate. We would develop that rate, and we would come back probably in, like I said, May or June with what that rate is, and then confirm if folks want to put that in their budget. So this is not a definite vote now that you're committing yourself. We're just trying to get some guidance. And I think we've gotten enough of it so far to know what direction we need to go.
Yeah, and this is Scott. I mean, Ron, you know, it's perfectly fine to have the scenario. I'd ask you to make sure any cost impacts to well maintenance or anything else with respect to well levels is incorporated in that. I think that there are enough points of view in the Woodlands that you have to be able to defend this economically. And it has to survive challenge economically. And, in addition to having a real subsidence benefit. So I'd strongly recommend that the economic argument be very well vetted.
One thing I notice is the slabs on my driveway are moving. And, I can't tell whether it's settling on, after 15 years, of the ground, compacting at the surface, or if it's subsidence. But, you get around Panther Creek and you can see real significant movement of the driveways. And I mean Panther Creek Drive.
Scott, when you're talking about the economic impacts, are you saying savings from not running the pumps?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or the fact that the levels aren't going down and that yields some maintenance benefit. I mean, I don't know. I want to know all the factors into what we ultimately pay, which is a combination of wholesale rates and maintenance and.
Yeah, I could see
And then-
that. I just wanted to clarify that that's what you meant.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
One clarification with Scott. This is Mark Monderow. You stated a Lone Star groundwater board member asked the township to go to 100% surface water.
If you're
Is that
concerned
correct?
about subsidence, the Woodlands, then go to 100% surface water. So if you take this action, you are lending credence to that point of view.
Well, I would say, first of all, he should have come before the Woodlands Water
Well,
Board
okay,
instead of the township board, because there are 10 mud districts in charge of water. So that, I'm getting my point across. So, our job's to take care of our residents in Mud 46. And I feel we do a good job. I feel we got a bunch of good board members, and I think we can come up with some good recommendations. So
To clarify, he did state he was speaking on his own behalf for his own opinion, not on behalf of the board. So he did come out and say that. So
okay.
Yes, this is Scott. I didn't intend to imply otherwise. Thank you, Deidre, for clarifying that.
Okay, that's good. I need to probably incorporate that into my train of thought and vocabulary as I speak on these meetings.
Just one other technical note is, and y'all kind of hit on it, is when we were down at 65% surface water and 50% surface water, we were relatively flat and the noise was kind of bouncing up and down. That was because not only the Woodlands was at that rate, but also Southern Montgomery County Mud, Oak Ridge North, Rayford Road, everybody that we provided surface water to were all at that same level. If you're the only one that goes to the 50% and everybody else stays at 35%, I don't know if you're going to see that same flattening out that we saw in 2016, because those around you, like y'all said, the localized issue, those around you are still going to be pumping the water out. And then the other problem, because somebody asked us in the previous mud meeting, how long would it take you to see a change? How many data points would you have to see to change? Well, it depends on the weather too. If we roll into a period of a year or two where we have relatively wet weather, you're going to have a naturally reduction in demand anyway, and a reduction in groundwater usage. However, if we go into 12 or 18 or 24 months of drought, you're going to have a much larger total demand, which ends up being a larger demand on your groundwater no matter what. So I wouldn't put a whole lot of faith in just looking at a data point or two data points after you go through this and see if you accomplished what you were aiming to accomplish. It's just something to be aware of.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Any more discussion on this before we move to number 12?
Mark, I just want to say, this is Margie, that I agree with George and Deirdre on this, that we really should look to the 50%. I think anything we can do to save the pumpage of the aquifers is in our best interest in the long term, in the next 20 years, whatever time frame we're looking at. So I would go along with the 50%.
Okay, thank you, Margie. All right, number 12, consider award of construction of branch crossing ditch repair contract.
This is Mike Mooney. This has been a long time coming. I know you all know that. This is one of the FEMA projects that's coming up on 3.5 years. Excuse me. Old now. We finally got this one through the FEMA red tape and out to bid. We bid the project February 25th. In your packet is the recommendation of award from LJA, our consultant, on page 26, 27, and 28 and 29 are the bid tabulations. There were 4 bidders on the project. The bids range from a low bid of about 125,000 to a high bid of about 366,000. This does qualify for FEMA reimbursement of we're eligible for 90% reimbursement. With your approval, we would like to get started. It's a quick 30 working day job, 45 calendar day job. We'd like to get started within the next week or two. And I'll answer questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Mike, we had in our budget, we allocated something like $346,000 for large ditch repair.
Yes, sir.
Is this saying that instead of a cost of nearly 350,000, that cost will be 124, almost 125,000?
This is Mike. There is another project that we have not bid yet that's still out there. It's in High Oaks. It's still lumbering through the FEMA red tape. That 300,000 includes that other project that we have not bid yet.
Is it same kind of magnitude or is it smaller?
It's a little bit bigger job. It's a little bit of a bigger job, more riprap, but just a little different scope, a little bit longer duration.
Okay.
But this Mike again, but we're hopeful to at least save some money, not spend all that 345. That was just a budget number. This job here we're looking at came in under budget, and we're hopeful that the next one will as well.
What did you have allocated for this one?
This one, I have to go back and look. I want to say it was around 175 instead of 125.
Okay.
This is Scott. Do you have any concerns about the quality with any of the 4 companies that they would do the job they would do?
LJA, this Mike again, LJA has checked out the low bidder and checked their references and have found nothing that would preclude them from completing the project. I'm not personally familiar with the company, but LJA has done work with them on different projects, not necessarily here in the Woodlands, but different projects in and around Houston area, and check their references, and they all checked out.
All right, I need a motion if we want to get the work done.
Mark, this is Margie. I'll make the motion that we accept this amount.
Okay, thank you, Margie.
Scott, I'll second it. I think George got it.
Okay, I'm gonna say George got it with Scott's recommendation. By George.
Well, thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. This is Mark Vondereau. I vote aye. Margie Podzalinski, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Deidre Eklund, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott Custer, how do you vote?
Aye.
George Newman, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right, thank y'all.
Say one last question, Mike. When do you look for them to start construction?
I call them in the morning and tell them the board approved the project. It kind of be up to their schedule. I'd like to have them start first week in April if possible.
Do they tolerate observers?
You know, for probably depends on their safety officer. We don't want just public coming by excavation or any open holes, but I think if you stood on the other side of the ditch, I think that wouldn't bother anybody.
Okay.
Scott, I think our president vanished.
We can assign.
Proceed with the vice chair.
Let's just keep moving. Let's go on to the next thing here on the agenda.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back.
On
Okay.
the agenda with Margie's recommendation. Discuss potential reduction in the district's 2021 tax rate.
I think this was a carryover from last month. Didn't we
Yes,
talk
sir.
about this last month? So I don't know that any action is or discussions needed again.
Okay.
Let's just cross it off then.
Okay. 14. Any questions on 13 before we go to 14?
I guess I have, a sort of philosophical comment of, as we go do our budgeting, normally we say that we want to have some amount of reserve, and it's kind of a seat of the pants kind of feel. This is what we need for reserve. And, I'd like to see some more analytical thinking on that and say, here are the crises or contingencies that we want to guard against with our reserve, and then size the reserve to meet that. And I'm talking about the operating reserve. So I don't know whether we do that as part of the budgeting process or do that ahead of time.
Okay.
But that is sort of an impact on taxes. Is our reserve big enough now, or are we going to need to let it grow a little?
Okay. We'll see about our reserves when we start talking about number 14.
Okay.
All right, who wants to cover 14? Spring Creek Flood Control Dam feasibility study.
I'm going to speed things up. I'm looking at the clock here, and keep in mind, we have what do they call it in the tech world? A hard stop at 6 p.m.
Said that a lot.
Come on.
On page, what is it? Page 30 is a summary of what MUD 46's share of this effort would be. You participated at least once, maybe twice in this over the last couple of years, and with the participation from the city of Humble and the large participation from the Harris County Flood Control District, I think you're getting a very good deal on an important analysis. So.
All right, Jim. Thank you. You want to continue with a general manager's gloss over?
Okay, I've got a number of items I'm going to try to go through quickly. And we talked at the trustee meeting regarding SJRA's request to put out an RFQ to look at the feasibility of consolidating wastewater treatment facilities in the Woodlands. A lot of discussion on that topic. It ended up where the trustees wanted more information, in particular regarding public engagement and stakeholder communication, stakeholder outreach. We have a meeting set with the Woodlands Township for April the 1st to get some feedback from them on this topic. SJRA will come back at the April meeting to try to give a more clear picture of what public engagement and public outreach would look like during this feasibility study. And we'll see what happens in April. SJRA did present a picture, a snapshot of their 10-year projection. Each year they look at it, take a 10-year look going forward. We're looking at about $180 million in needed improvements over 10 years. Our audit committee is going to continue to look at this and come back with recommended funding options for this substantial investment. We started that process back in December, and I think got sidetracked a little bit with the feasibility study of wastewater treatment consolidation, but that effort on the audit committee will resume very soon. If you have any candidates in our MUDs that are interested in running as a special district candidate on the Montgomery Central Appraisal District, now is the time to offer your name to be considered. We had a request from one MUD to start meeting again in person. I reported to the trustees that I thought this I don't think we have unanimous consensus with our MUDs that it's time to do that yet. Let's look at what evolves over the next couple of months regarding the governor's waiver of Open Meeting Act requirements. And if we decide to come back together before the governor lifts that waiver, I'd like for it to be all the MUDs deciding to do it rather than a hodgepodge, if you will, of some MUDs meeting in person and some meeting via Zoom or remote. Also, MCAT has announced that the temporary disaster relief is available for properties that suffered damage from the freeze. SJRA is offering to tour their SCADA room. Scott had made a request that he thought that would be an interesting tour, and they are going to offer that to all the MUD directors. Shelley will be sending out an invite for any director that would like to tour their SCADA facility in the near future. We are, as I reported last month, Lone Star is requesting to meet with stakeholders in kind of an informal environment with a few of their elected officials and a few of ours. President Eric Hurd has responded to that request. He's asked that Laura Norton, John Yours, and Neil Gaynor join him and me with 4 of their elected officials. So we'll report on how that goes next month. Still working.
Scott, Jim, do we know which board members from Lone Star will be there?
Yes, I'm told it's going to be John Boucher, Larry Rogers, and Spigner, and James Beach, their hydrology consultant.
Thanks.
Still working with a couple of neighborhoods on the AMI pole installations. There's a summary of that in your packet. As Brian Yates reported, it's been a real struggle with TACUS. We're in an unsustainable situation with them. We got a meeting set tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes. You are getting a refund from the wood. Yes, George.
I had a question on the pole. I looked at the one over here off of Woodlands Parkway, and I'd call it a cell phone tower rather than a pole. It's a significant installation. And what I'm wondering is, I assume it's the people across the ditch that can see that pole from their backyard. And I see that it may cost something over $200,000 to move it. I'm wondering, what is the inclination of the plan going forward? Would they be happy with just painting it? Or are they going to be requesting that we, and I don't know who we is, spend $200,000 to move it?
And I don't think we have a moving price yet. What you're looking at, we have a price to replace it with a camouflage pole.
Okay.
And we have a price to paint it. And we have a price to put in a new power coated pole. The moving it to a new location analysis is not complete yet. That's still seeing if it's even feasible, if we have a place to move it to and what it would cost. That's
So
to be
you would distribute that cost across all the MUDs, or is that,
to be determined.
I see.
Our
Uh,
meds, that's a possibility.
You've got a refund coming from the Woodlands Water Agency Operating Reserve, HARC monthly reports in your packet if you have questions. And last but not least, several compliment emails regarding our staff and the freeze operations. And I just want to emphasize that was truly a very difficult thing to deal with, especially our field personnel. Congratulations and thank you to the River Authority for keeping the pressure up, keeping us out of the boil water notice category. But it was very tough on our staff as well. Our emergency phone system went down. We had employees answering phones from their homes to get through that difficult time. But it's in our rearview mirror now, and TACUS is our new challenge.
Jim, were you going to comment on the R&R fund? This is Scott.
You mean the Woodlands Water Agency?
The audit committee, yes, the audit report, the 1.2 million.
Well, I did report that with the Woodlands Water Agency Board voted to do a refunding to the MUDs from our operating reserve each year. We look at after the audit, and if we have if the reserves pass a certain threshold, we do a rebating back to the MUDs, and that breakdown is in your packet. Is that it?
Yeah, sorry, Jim. I'm referring to the resolution of the R&R fund where we had an overage of 1.28 million and the vote in the trustee committee to retain the funds and fund additional projects.
To the River Authority.
Yeah.
I know. That's in the summary. Yes. You can go ahead and discuss that if you'd like under the trustees report. But yeah, that was acted on as I remember, but to be ratified next month because of the way the agenda item was worded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That concludes my report.
Scott, do you have anything further you want to add?
Well, I'll cover it in my section. Yeah.
Okay.
Jim, did you want to mention that you have YouTube videos of these meetings posted on our webpage?
Oh yeah, the videos are now posted on all the MUD web pages back January and February, and there are links on the MUD web pages for the public to join the meeting.
Sounds good. But now we can watch ourselves. That's great. You done, Jim? That completes your, okay.
Yes.
16, we want to act on supporting Deidre for the AWBD Emerging Leaders in Initiative Program, excuse me.
Deidre, you want to give a summary of that topic, please?
I can. It is an emerging leader program with AWBD. You do have to have 5 to 15 years of experience on water district board or industry experience, but I do have that through work and working with utility districts for over 9 years. So there is a fee. I think it was looking for it.
It's on page 52. It says that the fee will be $350 for the program.
Yeah.
And then the sponsorship applications here. So
I wasn't thinking about a sponsorship, but I thought it would be good to have representation on this emerging leader program and just try to get more involved with AWBD.
Okay. Sounds good.
I agree. Mark Von der Rohe agrees. We need a motion to
So is the motion to pay her $350 tuition? Is that the motion?
That's what I was gonna say, do. But
Okay.
Input from the board. What do y'all want to do? I say support her financially,
I'm with-
mentally, physically, and financially.
I'm
Maybe-
with you, Mom.
Maybe
I'm
she
happy
doesn't
to
want
support
all that together.
So Mark, is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we support Deidre Eklund for the AWBD initiative program, emerging leaders. We need all the representation up there that we can get from the Woodlands area.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I appreciate you wanting to do that, Deidre. So that's my motion. Need a second?
Mark, I'll second. This is Margie. I'll second.
Okay. Discussion. Brian Yates, is there any legalities on paying any kind of registration fees or any fees like that? Do you know of?
This is Brian. No, nothing. Nothing that I think would prohibit you from doing this. It's industry related. It relates to the mud. It relates to mud business. So I don't see any issue.
Professional fee. Okay. All right. Mark Monroe makes that motion. Margie, you second it. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Mark Monroe votes aye. Margie Podolinsky, how do you vote?
Aye.
Deidre Eklund, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott Custer, how do you vote?
Aye.
George Newman, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right, Deidre. I know you'll do a good job.
Thank
Good
you.
deal.
I hope I get selected.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
that's awesome. Awesome.
Number 17, water resource report, 6 minutes or less. Hello, hello.
You talking
Scott?
about 17?
17, did I say 16? I'm looking at, yeah, 17, Woodlands Water
Trustee.
Trustee Report.
Oh, trustee report. Yes. So there were two votes of note. One Jim mentioned that was on the wastewater treatment plant go forward. That was a 5-5 vote. I was on the no side of that vote to go forward pending more information. And Jim, I'm not, maybe there's an offline conversation. I didn't think it was just more clarity on public outreach. I think there's clarity needed on the financial scenarios and the scenarios that would be considered. That was the reason I voted no, is because I felt like the scenarios under consideration for the $500,000 spend on this study was not quite right. So those need some refinement in order for me to say yes to $500,000. Is there a question?
You said million, I think, but you mean billion, right?
No, the feasibility study is a $500K to $1 million, I think I want to say. So even that feasibility study, that's pretty hefty if we're not sure that the scenarios that are under consideration are run the full gamut of what should be considered. So I think there's still a lot of question marks on the board on that. The second thing was what I had mentioned, that was one of the agenda items was an overage in the R&R fund. And Jim, keep me honest here, but that overage was $1.283 million. And there was a vote the vote on that was to retain it in the R&R fund or do a refunding. And the vote was 9-1. I was the one. I want to tell you why, because also in that vote was a list of projects in the event that the R&R fund was retained that would be funded. And those projects weren't necessarily in the 10-year plan, and they were things like forklifts and things like trucks, which are important, but were never prioritized in a list. So there was a $1.2 million overage that was assigned to a set of projects that got stamped. And so that is still pending another review next month, but I would imagine it would still be 9-1. But I want you all to know when I'm totally disjointed from the rest of the board, because you need to consider how I'm voting as with me as your trustee. So that is the reason I voted no on that one. didn't get a chance to fully explain it. Eric cut me off and hit the vote, but that was, I had asked some questions and then the vote happened. So that's what happened there. I think that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you, Scott. No content, 18, nobody from the development company, anything, 19 we want to put on future agendas.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that we will have the minutes from the March meeting in your packets next month. We'll also have agenda items to review and kind of formalize the recommended goals and objectives, and have an agenda item to discuss that in the next meeting.
Okay, Deidre, keep us informed on what you need. Do you need any letters of recommendations? Whatever we can do to get staff to other boards, whatever we need to do to help you, please don't hesitate to ask us.
I will, thank you. It's due in May, so I'll
Okay.
have it filled out in April.
Okay. Anything else, people?
No, I just tell Jim, thank you for going after Tachus, because it sounds like they're saying it's not their problem, but it is their problem. So that's good.
Yeah.
We're staying on top.
All right, thank y'all, and see y'all at our next meeting, whenever that is. If you want a special one, don't hesitate to ask. Here we go. Bye-bye.
See y'all.
Thanks, Mark.